Okay, here we are. Part 2 of the October 2025 Next Fest coverage. This time we have 29 more games and a top 10 at the end, with games from both this video and part 1, which you should definitely watch if you haven't. So, let's wrap up this coverage, shall we? Could I interest you in a whole lot of games that have come out recently or will come out in the near future? Welcome to Strig's Game Café, everyone. Have a cup of Steam Next Fest. Are you a fan of minimalist platformers like Thomas Was Alone or Flat Heroes? Then give InOut by Bora Cara and Feiyaz Kukuk a chance. InOut is a 2D puzzle platformer where every level hides secrets. Things start out pretty linear, but eventually you get the ability to travel between levels freely. When that happens, you have the opportunity to find new hints in each one, many of which lead to different paths and even more hidden stuff. The levels themselves usually take the shape of small rooms where you have to solve a puzzle to reach the exit. A lot of them involve pushing blocks, spring jumps, and avoiding spikes. If you get hit, you don't really die, you just reset to the start of the room. There does seem to be a mostly cryptic story, but not much is explained, at least in the demo. The most important thing that I got was the fact that sequence breaks are apparently taken into account for the narrative. The platforming is simple but fun, and the whole gimmick of looking for secrets in every level should prove interesting for the scope of the full game. Kinda gives a tiny hint of that ARG feel, even if it's all self-contained. InOut will release in December of 2025. If you're already into puzzle platformers and are looking for a challenge, then maybe a good place to start would be a game that dares you to go as fast as you can. Invertinator by Froggers is a puzzle platformer where you can only do two things: flip gravity and invert space. The goal is to reach the exit of each level as quickly as you can while avoiding obstacles in your way. It sounds easy, but as you advance, the levels will get more and more complex. So if you want to get those new record times, you need to lock in and memorize absolutely everything you need to do. The demo was on a bit of the short side, but I think I got a good feel for what the game offers. The one thing I'm not sure about is whether or not people would be able to find faster alternative routes to complete each level, as expected of games that value speed this much. And while simple, the controls feel pretty snappy, so it still felt good to play. Invertinator is already out. If you're a fan of Hotline Miami and other similar top-down fast shooters, you're probably gonna love this one. Jackal by Transhuman Design is a game where you, according to the developer's Steam page, become a coked up John Wick who can turn Vegas into a stage for improvised carnage. So yeah, you play as a hitman that pretty much has the god Anubis as his own overdose symptom, disguised as an imaginary friend. In between the incredibly stylish cutscenes, you conduct raids in 1970s Vegas casino hotels, with your goal being to kill pretty much anything that moves. In most of these missions, you start barehanded, but you can pick up weapons from the ground or steal them from enemies. Just be careful though, you're really frail and sometimes one single hit is all it takes for Anubis to put your heart on the scales instead. So, fast-paced action, interesting visuals and storyline, some bangers for the music, and levels that can be punishing but so satisfying to conquer. I don't think it's hard to tell that Jackal was one of my favorite experiences in this next fest. Jackal will release in January of 2026. This one is for the people who grew up playing platformers on the Game Boy Color. Kero Cowboy by Metagame Mike is a cartoonish 2D platformer featuring a cowboy frog called Kero, who travels through the Wild West to capture its most wanted criminals. To me, the best way to describe Kero Cowboy gameplay-wise is as a mix of Kirby and Mega Man. Kero can grab enemies with his tongue to spit them out as projectiles, as well as use a gun with limited ammo to shoot down critters from a distance. There are also plenty of power-ups, like one that gives you infinite ammo for a time, and a giant boot that lets you jump on top of spikes. Additionally, you can collect coins which are used to buy checkpoints mid-stage that also refuel your health. Kero Cowboy is pretty solid if you're looking for a new game that gives the old Game Boy Color experience. My only issue with the demo was that the Steam page said it had partial controller support, but I couldn't get my PS4 controller working at all. I hope it got fixed for the full release. Speaking of, Kero Cowboy is already out. For those of you yearning for a 3D Metroidvania with anime aesthetics, you might want to give a shot to Kotama and the Academy Citadel by Atom String Games. The game has you playing as the titular Kotama, who's an exchange student at the Carnival Academy and is looking to participate in the Carnival Star election to obtain the eponymous title. Yeah, I have no idea what any of that means either, your guess is as good as mine. I guess the best way to sum it up is, girl joins a shonen style battle academy and has to fight people to get to the top. That's basically it, though the full game will probably offer some more complex lore than this, at least according to the Steam page. Gameplay wise, it's a pretty standard Metroidvania, but I have to mention that the platforming feels really tight and movement is fluid as hell. I especially love the slide and the little wall kick that Kotama does to climb ledges. Speaking of fluid, the combat has a bit of a twist. Your normal attacks will cover the enemy with literal fluid. I know it sounds weird, but bear with me. After the enemy is covered head to toe in your weird purple juice, they'll start to flash. Hitting them with a strong attack will detonate the fluid to deal extra damage. It takes some getting used to, but once you find a rhythm, you start doing a lot better in enemy encounters. While the story might expand in the full game, I will admit I am into this one way more for the mechanics and the 3D anime aesthetics, which look great. Kotama and Academy Citadel will release in the final quarter of 2025. For the next entry, we have a game of chess with a deadly twist. Lilith's Game by Tico, Solitar, Dryden Thomas Games, IDK Box, Taruk and Cousins, damn that's a lot of names, is a turn-based tactics game where you play a game of chess against the demon queen Lilith. On the surface, this would be a chess game like any other, except one of the opponent's pieces is possessed. And if you capture that specific piece, you die. The particular possessed piece is different in every game, of course. However, there are items that can help you, especially when it comes to identifying whether or not a piece is safe or if it has a demon inside. To get these items though, you're gonna have to sacrifice your own pieces. Oh, and in case you've forgotten, the regular chess rules still apply, meaning that if your king is captured, it's curtains for you all the same. Once you capture every piece besides the cursed one, you win the match. I really think some game formulas manage to do a lot with only a little, and Lilith's Game is a testament to that. It iterates just a tiny bit on something that already exists, and manages to make the game have a completely different feel, where every sacrifice counts. Though the demonic looking visuals certainly help. The release date for Lilith's Game is yet to be announced. For a roguelite bullet heaven game with pixel art aesthetics, we have Little Witch's Carnival by Kanata Game. As the game's title implies, you play as a little witch flying around and firing spells at waves of enemies. At the start of each run, you choose a spell to use, and as you gather experience, you get abilities that make it evolve in different ways, like making your fireball into a huge explosion, or your ice shot into an ice shotgun. You move with the keyboard and aim with the mouse, clicking to fire. You also have a dash that can get you out of sticky situations, but you can't keep using it forever. All things considered, Little Witch's Carnival isn't an amazing bullet heaven, but it is pretty entertaining, and the power-ups have plenty of variety. A stage takes 20 minutes to play, and you probably get the hang of things pretty fast, especially if you played other games like this before. The aesthetics are pretty nice, the enemies have some decent variation in attack patterns, and the visual clarity was actually pretty good, which is noteworthy since it's something the genre typically struggles with. My only issue with the demo was that there were some texts that weren't fully translated. It wasn't anything major though, just a handful of names in the first few menus. Nothing that really impacted my gameplay as far as I could tell. Little Witch's Carnival is already out. If you like your action platformers with a good deal of visual flair, give a chance to Majogami by Inti Creates, probably best known for the Gunvolt series. Majogami is a 2D hack-and-slash game where you play as Shiroha, traveling through strange worlds with a dark papercraft-like aesthetic to hunt down witches. Shiroha is also aided by Shiori, her father, who is a paper talisman for some reason. In terms of gameplay, the highlight is certainly the Setsuna ability, which lets you dash to an enemy while attacking it. It was really satisfying to rush through multiple targets like this. I know it's a weird comparison, but it almost feels like when you use the homing attack to go through multiple enemies in a 3D Sonic game. You can only use Setsuna a number of times though. You can replenish those uses by hitting enemies with normal attacks, or by killing them. Additionally, the direction in which you use Setsuna, horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, matters, and some enemies have shields which you need to break by using the move in a specific direction. Majogami is a fast-paced action platformer with a very stylish art direction, both things that are kind of expected of Inti Creates games at this point, and it's looking like a really solid game on all fronts. Majogami is already out. Here's a Metroidvania that will appeal to fans of the genre from back in the NES days. Malleus Maleficarum by Herr Grecian is a retro-style 2D Metroidvania about a woman called Mirabelle exploring a mansion to hunt down a group of witches. That's pretty much as deep as the plot gets, at least in the demo, but the main attraction here is clearly the gameplay. Naturally, as you progress through the witch's mansion, you find new weapons that you can both use against enemies and to progress through environments, like the Moon Avenger axe that cuts chains, or the hag's head that can burn down trees standing in your way. I think the game was a bit too easy and the soundtrack isn't the best, but otherwise I think this is a decent visual recreation of the NES style. Plus, the Steam page does hint that the plot will be more elaborate than it seemed in the demo, with all the mentions of discovering the witch's past. I suppose we'll see whether that holds up when the full game comes out. Malleus Maleficarum will release in January of 2026. This one has an intriguing premise. Master Lemon, The Quest for Iceland by Pepita Digital, is a narrative adventure game where you discover new words from different languages and use their power to solve puzzles and move forward. The story revolves around Limão, or Lemon as in the English translation, a Brazilian boy who loved learning languages and mastered several of them to fulfill his dream of moving to Iceland, the land of the Vikings as he puts it. Alternating between memories of his life and a strange new world inhabited by creatures called Bashirs, Lemon has to help eradicate a memory-devouring plague that threatens to destroy all human language and civilization as we know it. By talking to different characters and exploring the environment, Lemon can learn new words from different languages, which can be used to solve puzzles and clear your path. For example, the Icelandic word Ratuljost, roughly translating to enough light to illuminate your path, is used as a light that can clear away fog blocking new areas. Meanwhile, Gambiarra, meaning makeshift or jury rig in Brazilian Portuguese, is used to craft new items from objects that you have. Master Lemon brings together multiple languages, over 25 according to the game's Steam page, in a story that explores the love of adventure itself. And all of it wrapped up in a pretty neat pixel art style package. Master Lemon, The Quest for Iceland, is already out. Here's another example of how a game with a very simple premise can be incredibly fun. Metamorphosis by Wise Monkeys and Brothers Studio is a chess puzzle game where you have only one piece and need to capture the opposing king in a certain number of moves. Every piece you capture, however, transforms you into that very piece. Things start out simple enough since your opponents don't move, but as you progress through the puzzles, you start seeing tiles that replenish or subtract a certain amount of moves when you land on them, cracked tiles that break after you land on them once, red pieces that will actually move to try and capture you, and gold ones that serve as an infinite source of transformations into one particular piece. The demo was pretty short, but since some puzzles have multiple solutions, I think the full game is shaping up to be a fun time, especially if it introduces more complex mechanics than those present in the current version. Metamorphosis will release in December of 2025. If you've been following this channel, you should know I do love my hard platformers with unorthodox controls. One such game is Monumentum by Jacob Scott. Monumentum is a Metroidvania rage puzzle platformer pinball-like. Creator's words, not mine. Where you control both the environment and the playable character. By playable character, I mean this rolling square here. Your goal is to make use of all those dormant mechanisms to reach the top of whatever this mega structure is. Different mechanics use different buttons on your controller. To give an example, with the PlayStation 1 I used, the X button activates these springs, the square button turns on these anti-gravity rails, and the shoulder and trigger buttons are used for these springs that send you sideways. You don't have all of those abilities from the start though, hence the Metroidvania part of this game. You unlock them as you traverse this strange machine, and you then make more progress towards the top, or fall back to the bottom depending on your skill. Monumentum seems to me like one of those relatively short but well-polished games, and while the game has no music, the visuals and sound effects give it a lot of game feel. Monumentum is already out. Are you a fan of roguelites but looking for something a little more unorthodox? Well, I think I stumbled into a bit of a hidden gem. Oreflux by Malleus P is a mining roguelite in which your objective is to dig deep, find minerals, and then bring them back to the surface with the goal of getting rich. You can dig in any direction and also plant bombs to blow up large chunks of the stage. To go back up, you'll make use of your jetpack, though it runs on a stamina-like system, so be careful with it. Once you bring back enough gems to fill your daily quota, you get access to a new perk. If you don't though, you keep going at a disadvantage, meaning the game has a risk-reward factor in knowing when to go back to the surface and deposit your shiny rocks. On top of the perks from the daily quota, any extra money you accumulate can be used to buy more items and abilities. After a few rounds you reach a mine or die stage. These are pretty much the boss levels of the game. This time if you don't fulfill your quota, your run is over. Oreflux's game loop sounds simpler than most roguelites on paper. After all, there's no combat. But that doesn't mean you won't have to get good and strategize for the best abilities to get on your run. Before you realize, you have spent a long amount of time down here in the mines. Oreflux is already out. Auto-scroller platformers aren't necessarily my vibe, but I'll admit, this one was entertaining. Pixel Dash Toast of Destiny by Clover Lab is a game where you control a schoolgirl with a toast in her mouth who's running to be on time for her school trip. Along the way, you have to jump and dodge obstacles. There are no lives, but being hit even once sends you to the last checkpoint. Though there are some power-ups like a shield that protects you from a single hit. At the end of a level, you'll be graded based on how many retries you needed and how high your score became from all the stars and items you collected. Pixel Dash is a very retro experience. It might be a weird thing to say, but this is precisely the kind of game that I remember being shown in my childhood cartoons whenever they wanted to show someone playing video games. To be clear, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Simple fun is simple fun, and a nice art style and animated cutscenes definitely help. Pixel Dash Toast of Destiny is already out. Here's yet another game for people that grew up with portable platformers, especially the Sonic ones. Polyroll Pocket by Spicy Hero Games is the sequel to the first Polyroll game. I think the best way for me to describe the gameplay is as an in-between of Mario and Sonic. More specifically, the game's overall speed is closer to Mario, while Polyroll's actions are more in line with Sonic's. So expect to jump on top of enemies, hit blocks from below, roll along the levels, grab power-ups, and fight bosses every 4 levels. All the while trying to power your rocket to go to the moon. It's a very by-the-book platformer, but the game feels on point for nostalgia, and the art style is the perfect blend of retro and cute. In particular, I love the color palette. It's colorful and makes things very clear visually, even in levels where the time of day shifts. Plus, in true portable style game for PC fashion, Polyroll Pocket has a Game Boy frame for the full screen setting. I just really like that touch. Polyroll Pocket will release in the first quarter of 2026. I feel like this game is big enough to be recognizable, so I'll go straight to the point. It's time to PowerWash again. PowerWash Simulator 2 by Future Lab is... well, it is what it is. A relaxing game where you clean stuff alone or with friends. You'll be given tasks to hose down different things throughout the town of Detergento, and you'll then have to use different nozzles to spray things until they're squeaky clean. And in between missions, you can order new furniture to place around your HQ. Obviously, you have to clean it first. After it's pristine, you can set it down. Now, I didn't play the first PowerWash Simulator, but I think I'm starting to understand what the fuss was about. Before I even knew what was happening, I had already spent almost half an hour cleaning this truck. Something I never would do in real life. One thing of note is how nearly every single piece of an object counts as a milestone for the mission. For example, in the truck, not only the tires, but the different parts of each tire are all their own objectives. This means you can complete a lot of goals really fast, aiding the sensation of constant progress. And after you're completely done, you get to watch a satisfying accelerated replay of you cleaning everything. PowerWash Simulator 2 is already out. I personally love it when puzzle platformers are centered around a duo of characters with different skill sets. It's a simple dynamic, but when done right, it can be magnetic. Proton Electron by Electron Lab is a game set entirely within a piece of electronic equipment corroded by antimatter. Dr. Proton then shrinks down to atomic level and enters the machine, where he soon finds a creature called an Electron Sprite. The duo then begin making their way through the device, using their opposing energies to open their way. The way this works is with Proton playing like a regular 2D side-scroller character, while Electron almost plays like a top-down game, having to jump from surface to surface. Both of them can also use those surfaces of their respective colors as springs. though the opposing color will kill them on touch, forcing a room restart. There are also switches that can only be activated by either Proton or Electron, as well as certain gimmicks like Electron magnetizing the surfaces in, so Proton can walk on walls. Finally, you can also join both characters together, which is necessary because you can't leave a room with only one of them. I genuinely found the puzzles to be fun, and I was surprised to still be learning new mechanics relatively late into the game. Sounds like Proton and Electron will really make people love electromagnetism, if the gameplay is any indication. Proton and Electron's release date is set to coming soon. Okay, this is just too good for me to not read out loud. One day, Pyrotoad was chilling at his pad, playing his favorite video game, Battle Dudes, when suddenly he had the urge to go for a night on the pond. But, being a frog of style, he wasn't about to head out without his prized Croclay shades. However, to his chagrin, when he opened his accessory drawer to get them, he found it empty, save for a suspicious note which read, "If you ever wanna see your Croclays again, meet me at the dungeon of Weblock Castle." Pyrotoad by WAV Games and Johnny Manjiro is a retro-style 2D precision platformer where you control the titular Toad in a quest to reclaim his drip. You have to complete multiple levels in succession by jumping and occasionally touching these bugs. They let you launch a single fireball, clearing obstacles in your path. The scene page teases more abilities in the full game, but that's all I got in the demo. I definitely did think Pyrotoad had plenty of variety in level design and environments, even just in the first half hour. Typically, the levels revolve around finding a way to open the exit. Get hit once, and you croak. Luckily, there are checkpoints in the way to make things less frustrating. Oh, and the game also uses a password system to save your progress. You know, like they used to back in my day. Pyrotoad is already out. I don't think it's a combination I see that often anymore, but if you want a game that mixes demonic horror with a cartoonish art style and point-and-click gameplay, then Riddlewood Manor by Peanut Button might be for you. Riddlewood Manor is an adventure game where you explore the eponymous haunted mansion to discover its secrets. Each set of rooms contains multiple puzzles and deadly consequences for clicking in the wrong things. Luckily, dying means you just respawn at the circle of monks outside the mansion. The puzzles, at least the ones in the demo, were pretty intuitive to me, something I always appreciate in adventure games, given some of them pretty much operate on cartoon logic. Exploring all the rooms using the 360-degree camera was also really nice, given the first-person nature of the game. Really helps give depth to those cursed grounds. But it's not just of scares and hauntings that this mansion is formed. There's plenty of dark humor too, and the faint of heart can trigger an alert for jump scares in the game's options. That said, be careful to not summon anything on accident. Riddlewood Manor is already out. The next game has you facing the biggest fear of any young wizardry apprentice: going outside. Scrabdackle by Jake Friend is a top-down adventure game where you control Blue, a novice student of the Wizard Academy. After an attack happens, Blue is blasted out and now has to find a way back in. You talk to weird peanut people, accumulate knowledge about the world, fire magic spells at raccoons, play golf, infiltrate a kingdom of ducks, and much more. All in this aesthetic that is somehow both weird and cute. Combat mostly revolves around firing spells from your wand and dashing to avoid attacks. But you can only fire so much before having to cool down. While not the most deep story-wise, I can say I had a lot of fun with the game's mechanics, and the quirky dialogue and soundtrack made me think the full game will be even more bizarre. Almost reminds me of Woopo, a game I played a few years ago. Scrabdackle will release on December 2nd, 2025. If you're an experienced gamer, you've probably seen lots of skill trees over the years. But have you ever grown one? Seedrun by Wardius is a minimalist farming sim where you grow plant-like beings and sell them to feed the money to your skill tree. You also need to complete tasks for another kind of currency used in the skill tree. To do that, you have to multitask between keeping the plants alive with the right amount of water, as well as chopping wood and mining stone. These are then refined into other items and used to expand your base, as the process becomes even more complicated. Aside from selling the plants, you can leave them to wander around and help you with your tasks, though they will eventually wither and die, restarting the cycle anew. As far as I can tell, there's no real penalty for messing up, so the game ends up being more of a cozy experience. However, the better you raise your plants, the more money you can get from selling them, so there is an incentive to play as best you can. Seedrun will release on November 28th, 2025. Here's your daily reminder. Have you taken your pills today? No? You know what? Probably for the best. Side Effects by HeroHun, Mr. Putzli, Jaiburi, and Lofar42 is basically Russian roulette with medication and an absolutely unhinged art style. You and up to other 3 patients, either AIs or other players, will take turns eating pills from the pile. And in this case, what doesn't make you weaker will actually kill you. You have a certain number of lives to spare, and whoever loses them all is down and out. In between each round, everyone gets to pick special items to help ensure they're the only surviving test subject. You can reverse the effect of certain pills, skip turns, and even copy an item from your opponent. Going farther into the game, you start to get bigger piles of pills with more deleterious side effects. Just keep calm and try to make the right choices. Hopefully, you can pass the tests without passing away. Side Effects will release on November 21st, 2025. You are a demon in the underworld, made out of glass and pain. The devil has given you a skateboard with a simple deal. Skate to the moon and swallow it, and you shall be freed. If that's not the most epic plot summary for a skate game I've ever seen, I don't know what that would even constitute. Skate Story by Sam Eng is a skating adventure game about a hungry demon who wants to devour the moon. Or moons? I'm not sure really. You traverse these surreal landscapes using your skateboard, but on occasion you need to fulfill some quests like buying a can of bile tea and delivering it to a thirsty philosopher bust that speaks in rhymes who offers a think piece in exchange. Don't ask questions, just accept it. On top of looking cool, your skate tricks actually deal damage to enemies, which is a sentence I never thought I would say. You have to use this quite often if the demo is any indication. On top of that, the game will present several timed challenges for you to conquer, so you better get the hang of that board fast if you want to escape hell to fulfill your quest. Skate Story will release on December 8th, 2025. If you ever played bullet hell games, you might have seen some of them use skill trees of some sort. But have you ever seen one where the skill tree is the map? That's the premise of Skigill by Akromi. You pick a character with their own skill tree, then go into a run and try to survive. That's basically it. The aesthetics are very minimalistic. In fact, I couldn't find any text in the game at all besides the game's title. Kinda forces you to learn by trying things out, something I definitely like. Another thing to mention is the color palette. Despite being very limited, it creates enough contrast to keep things visible, at least in my opinion. The skill tree gimmick comes into play whenever you gather enough experience for a level up. Instead of opening a menu, you walk to the spot in the skill tree you want to unlock. It's really fun, and it makes your positioning matter a lot, especially in the late game when you'll be chased by a whole mob of enemies. Skigill is already out in early access. You know those old RPGs with first-person battle systems? What if instead of command menus, you did everything with slots? Slots and Daggers by Friedman, the developer of Summer House, is a retro roguelike game based entirely around slots. If I had a coin for every such roguelike, I guess I'd have two.
Let's go gambling.
Anyway, here we have a more fantasy-themed take on the... well, I guess this is a subgenre now. You start by selecting slot symbols to start your run with. Landing on these symbols, of course, grants you the corresponding effect, though you don't have to match them all for it to work. So sword attacks enemy, shield blocks some incoming damage, and coin gives you extra money, for example. The effect for the turn is combined between the symbols you roll. But if you do manage to match all three, you get a critical hit, and the effect of the symbol you got in triple is enhanced. After that, you pretty much just keep fighting enemies until you eventually lose, gaining more symbols and abilities along the way. It's simple but addictive, and the game feel really lends itself to the more analog aesthetics of a slot machine. In between runs, you can fuel your fiscally irresponsible tendencies by using tokens to buy modifiers for the machine to help you in future runs. So, bet on finishing this quest and see if it pays off. Slots and Daggers is already out. When choosing which demos to play in each next fest, there are a variety of ways my interest can be piqued. Sometimes it's narrative, sometimes it's character designs, sometimes it's the aesthetics. In the case of Tides of Tomorrow by GZXArt, I became intrigued by the premise itself. Tides of Tomorrow is a first-person action-adventure game set in a colorful post-apocalyptic world where plastic has taken over everything, including people, thanks to a disease transmitted through water that requires constant medication. Civilization is contained to different islands, one of which you get to explore in the demo. And speaking of that, here is where the gimmick of the game comes in, because the version of the island you explore is one that has already been altered by a previous player. Let me explain. You are a Tidewalker, someone who can see the tides of time. And so is every other player of the game. When you enter an island, you follow the last player who visited, and many characters will already have been affected by that person's playthrough. Meaning not only do your choices matter, but so do the choices of the player that visited last. In turn, you can then change things with your actions for everyone who decides to follow you after you leave. The actions of every Tidewalker can be seen by their successors, and in fact, you have to sometimes look to the past in order to solve issues in the present. Depending on how much content and choices the full game has, I think it could end up being a phenomenal cooperative journey. Tides of Tomorrow will release on February 24th, 2026. If you like auto battlers, especially multiplayer ones, here's a game that will capture your attention and your soul. Turnbound by 1TK is a roguelike board game auto-battler that has players setting tiles on the field to battle captive souls of other players. First, you pick a piece with a fictional hero, like Sun Wukong, Alice, or Robin Hood, each with their own passives and ultimate abilities. Then, you pick accessories, consumables, weapons, and buy more tiles to create an arsenal that enhances itself even further depending on how you place each tile on the board. Also, the occasional special ability in between bouts. After that, you go into battle and hope your formation is good enough. The game loop is pretty satisfying, and there are bonuses for winning 3 rounds in succession. Also, losing once doesn't end your run. The game gives you 5 chances before that happens. The aesthetics are very pleasing too. I love the game feel the tiles have when being attacked or attacking. Truthfully, I don't remember seeing this particular combination of genres before, and I'm actually really intrigued at how addictive it was to play. Turnbound's release date is yet to be announced. Typically, most roguelikes will offer you a variety of abilities to pick from during your runs, so you can customize your build however you see fit. But what if you could customize the abilities themselves, resulting in a vast number of combinations that's too high to count? That's the premise of Wizard Cats by Big Frog Studios. And I'm aware it's not the first roguelike to do this kind of thing, but I just find it funny that the other roguelike I know that went with an ability customization mechanic is also themed after wizardry. Combat follows the basics of an isometric roguelike, though instead of defeating all enemies in a room, your goal is to survive until the time ends. But the more enemies you kill, the more coins you can grab, meaning you can spend more of them in the store that opens up after the monsters leave. In the store, you can then buy new runes and combine them for various effects. You can give them elemental properties, control the way in which your attacks spread, and even the way in which you use them, like clicks and hold inputs, charge attacks, or click and drag. With this high level of customization, Wizard Cats is looking like a roguelike with an insane amount of replayability value, something that's great for the genre. Plus, the aesthetic is charming, which always helps. Wizard Cats' release date is set to coming soon. Okay, I think for this one, I might as well try to paraphrase the Steam description. Yunyun Syndrome, Rhythm Psychosis by HuYu and Alliance Arts, the latter of which also published Needy Streamer Overload, is a rhythm adventure game about a psychotic hikikomori girl who corrupts the world with her severe brain rot from listening to too many Denpa songs. What's a Denpa song, you ask? Well, of course it's... a type of Japanese music that is intentionally strange and catchy. Common features of Denpa songs include intentionally off-key vocals, nonsensical lyrics, and over-the-top tune. Well, there you have it. The story has the hikikomori girl, who is called Cutie in-game, interacting with a fictional character called Yunyun, and apparently spreading brain rot on her behalf. You do this most of the time by playing the rhythm game, but occasionally you have to explore Cutie's house to unlock more Denpa songs. Also, her mother might come home on occasion and she apparently hates seeing her daughter playing games like this, meaning you have to activate her fake background, which also doubles as a safety net for you, the player, in case your own parents come in and see you playing this. Okay, that's cute. Yunyun Syndrome, Rhythm Psychosis release date is set to coming soon. So, that's it for the last few demos I've played in the Next Fest. Once more, good luck to the developers of these games, and I hope all of you watching manage to find a new game or two for your wishlist. Just remember to actually buy them and, more importantly, play them. Alright? Now, before I go, I want to talk about my personal top 10 from this next Fest edition. From bottom to top, here are my picks. Number 10, Skate Story, the surreal skating game about a demon wanting to eat the moon. Number 9, Final Sentence, the Battle Royale typing game where you see who can finish the sentences faster. Number 8, Turnbound, the tile-based auto-battler roguelike where you fight the souls of other trapped players. Number 7, Slots and Daggers, the roguelike with a gambling twist. Number 6, Escape from Ever After, the Paper Mario style RPG set in a world of storybooks. Number 5, Homura Hime, the action hack-and-slash game about an exorcist fighting demons. Number 4, Kotama and Academy Citadel, the 2D Metroidvania with 3D anime aesthetics set inside a school. Number 3, Bittersweet Birthday, a Souls-like game with an amnesiac protagonist recovering their memories. Number 2, Bubsy 4D, the latest entry for the platforming series of all time. And number 1, the best demo I played in this next fest, was Jackal, the game where you kill everything in sight while aided by Anubis himself. Well, this is it. I'm actually not sure if the next video essay will still be released this year, but just in case it's not, I wish you all Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. My name is Strig, and thank you for your patronage. If you're leaving already, please consider giving a tip in the form of a comment and a like. And if you're interested in coming back, don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell on your way out. Thank you for visiting Strig's Game Café.